I don't believe you. I don't see it. It's not happening. I don't see it. I think you're wrong. Fun's not allowed. We don't have fun here. Fuck, I can't name. Well, I guess I'm just killing this guy. Whatever. Nope. Well, yeah. I don't know either. Not actually that long. Honestly. I always started like... Fuck. I don't remember how long I played on Games for Windows Live, but it wasn't very long. I've been in it for a little while, I guess. No, I have no idea. I'm bad with time to begin with. It was, yeah. It was on PC with Games for Windows Live. Mm. Yes, I've played PvP in all 3 of the PC released games. No. Like, I've told you the only time I ever play on console is I play Demon Souls at my friend's house sometimes while we drink alcohol. That's about it. I can't. My computer's too shitty for it. I have an AMD CPU, so is Ryzen any better? I don't know, because well, no, it is for consumers. Yeah, I'm just thinking because AMD's always kind of sucked for emulation, at least in the past several years. I mean, that's fair. I'll probably upgrade to Ryzen eventually, or whatever comes out next. Ryzen's been pretty good, so. No. Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah. It was right near the end. It wasn't a long time at all. Maybe? It's possible. Yeah. Oopsies. Nope. Don't mind me talking to myself while I PvP. Oh. Oh. Yeah, probably. No. Not at all. Not at all. I was only into PvE in the beginning, so I didn't have much with the community at all back then. But honestly, it probably wasn't until I had like 400 hours in the game. Like I waited a long time before I got into PvP. And at first I was, I wasn't really like an honor kid, but I was definitely a scrub. And I had a very different mentality from what I have now towards it. Yeah. Oh god. Let's see. Some of the first people in the PvP community. The one that comes to mind is probably I mean not really big, but like people who were involved at all with the PvP community would be like Pete the Pinecone was probably one of the first. And he doesn't play like at all anymore. He's gone. But yeah, a lot actually. We were we played this game together a ton. We both we both used fashion builds a lot back then, of course. Yeah, not really. I might figure it out if I go back and look at my comments on my profile, but I'm not sure. Oh yeah. Yeah, that seems about right. I just looked at my screenshots actually. My first screenshot from which my first screenshot was from me doing PvP with somebody, and that was from 2015. So right around there, I guess. Oh, maybe. I think if I remember right, unless you're a different person, because it's been a fucking long time. But I think you were doing a boss cosplay in the forest, and you were actually surprised that I didn't disconnect or cheat against you. You had hacked stats, yeah. You were very much flagged. I mean, I've done that a couple times back in the day too when I was doing cosplay builds. Yeah. One day. One day I'll play it. It's like Demon Souls. Eventually I started to get to it. And maybe that'll happen with Bloodborne too. But it really is. Because, yeah, I don't have a console to play it on. Or the game itself, so... Yep. Damn it. Yeah. Even honestly, the Netcode in Dark Souls 2 and 3, there's certain things about it that are better than 1, and certain things that are a lot worse. Like how in Dark Souls 3, almost all the PvP I got in that game, somebody would end up T-posing and sliding around with no animations. That is a lot of that game. It's not that often, but it's very often. It happens at least once every time you have a PvP session, in my experience. Yeah, pretty much. Well, at least those games all have matchmaking servers. They're not... Because, like, Dark Souls 1 with Steamworks, and even when it was on GFWL, it's, like, entirely peer-to-peer otherwise. Like... I think they just sent way more data into than they had to. I don't know. It's a very strange situation. No, yeah, it's very different. Pretty sure. I think it is. I'm not sure. I never played it. Oh, absolutely. There is. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's a big part of it, yeah. Yeah. No, yeah. I'm aware of a lot of that, even though I haven't gotten that far in the game. Or ever PvP'd in it. That's a discussion in itself. I mean, I don't think it's that. Oh god, this guy's turning. That's just okay. It is. I mean, that's pretty fair. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it absolutely will be. I've seen a little bit, but not a whole lot. If it gets like a cease and desist or something. I mean, Yeah, who knows? I don't know how Atlas is with that kind of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on save editors and stuff. I don't know, console is a little rougher with that because not everyone has immediate access to it as easily. So it's kind of unfair to those people. I mean, muled save files go around the internet like wildfire for PC, and it's so easy to use them that there's almost no reason not to if you want to get into serious PvP. You know, I want to say I think that's part of the reason. Like, it's really also not at the same time, but I want to say it's part of the reason I'm not so into Dark Souls 2 PvP anymore. It's because matchmaking was based on soul memory unless you were doing the arena. And in the arena, I think it was more tiers than based on soul level, per se. Like, it wasn't the range calculated from your range, it was more a tier. Yeah, and that's kind of the thing is, like, in 2, you always ended up fighting, well, not always, but a lot of times, despite for a while, people were trying to push a soul level 150 meta in Dark Souls 2. But there's no reason to stay at that meta level because you're matching with people off of soul memory, not off a soul level. So you get a lot of people who are like SL 250 instead, or just max level because why the fuck wouldn't they be? They can be. Yeah, it really like they somewhat addressed it in the DLC release with the Agape ring, but even still, not really. I don't know, we've just been talking about random shit for a while. I was very excited for Dark Souls 3, even though I knew I shouldn't be. Yeah, that's pretty much where I was at too. And I have very conflicting feelings on the game. There's a lot I don't like, but I did have fun my first time playing through it. I did enjoy it quite a lot the first time. Yeah, honestly, I don't think that's far off. Yes, yes, there definitely is. They tried to take a lot from Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, and I think in a lot of cases they didn't take the right things. Yeah, and I gotta say, Dark Souls, or I mean, Bloodborne, although I haven't played it, it also has a reputation of the PvP being one of the weakest in the series. It might have something to do with it. I never played it, so I can't really say too much about it, but uh, yeah, I think that's I think that's pretty fair to say. I think they should have been able to do something more than they did, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel similarly about it, but I think, yeah, a lot of people might have different opinions. They really could have. I think it would have been better off that way, personally. But that I'm not that huge. God, a lot of people are gonna hate me for saying this. I'm not that huge on the lore, though. I used to be, but not so. What? Oh my god. So it's been a mostly silent stream of me occasionally talking to myself. Well done. That's quality. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. For real. You fucked it. That's what you've done.
Well, hello, stream. Hello for the first time this entire stream of 40 minutes. I guess I'll have to include a fucking note card at the beginning that says, turn to 40 minutes into the fucking stream to hear WorldDstroyer talk.
Unless you
Special
just come here on to talk to himself now and then.
special DLC unlocked at 40 minutes in. Okay, well, I guess I can just resume. Where was I before that happened? Oh, yeah, so, well, yeah, I think I just said that, they wouldn't, they would have to tie off all the loose ends in terms of lore. So, but, that's pretty much where I stopped, like, as a whole with with the Souls franchise, is I pretty much, well, I mean, I guess really I had to stop because there hasn't been a new game yet. Fucking yet, but in reality, after Dark Souls 3, I don't really see any way that they would be able to redeem themselves because I feel like it's just done and done. But fortunately, Dark Souls 3 is supposed to be the very last one in the series.
Yes, it is. And then it's just going to be new IPs, thank God.
So I just hope that they actually call it done. I hope that they make a Bloodborne like follow up or something. Like I think a lot of people want, or I mean, I'm pretty sure this will also never happen, but I'm pretty sure they're never gonna make a Demon Souls 2 again. Or
Oh,
not
no, I
again, or
doubt it.
just Demon Souls 2. A follow up.
I think they're done with Souls entirely. I mean, Bloodborne maybe, because it is technically different.
Yeah.
That we'll have to wait and see. But, nothing as far as Souls goes. I think we're done with that after the remaster.
Yeah.
Unless they decide to remaster 2 and 3 at some point, which I won't be happy about, honestly.
Yeah. So that's essentially where I went on the timeline now. Even though we lost fucking 40 minutes of dialogue, that was just essentially a timeline, but what the real focus of this isn't exactly what we've gotten into yet. Or we haven't exactly gotten into the focal point of our discussion here. And so now I can actually move on to these notes that I've taken, which nobody knew about until now because nobody fucking heard me mention that I had them at the beginning.
Yeah.
So this is all new info. But don't worry, audience. I have taken notes. Oh, okay. So going back to Dark Souls 1, which is what this is about. Um, I'd like to talk about basically the impact that the PvP community, or the in fact impacts to and from the PvP community over time as Dark Souls 1 has progressed. This is not going to, well, also accounting for the remaster and like predictions of what will possibly happen when it actually releases to the public. But um so let's see. You didn't play Dark Souls 1 when it first came out, did you?
No. It was, like I said, it was at the very end of Games for Windows Live is when I started.
So and this was like 2014. So Dark Souls 1, not 3, had been about 3 years old at this point.
Yeah.
So essentially, well, do you remember how the PvP community was at the time?
Now, like I said, I wasn't, even when I first started PvPing, I wasn't too involved with the PvP community. The most I saw, because the only place I even PvP'd really in the beginning was in Dark Root Forest. So it was pretty much all fashion builds, other scrubby players who were like me, and every now and then somebody with a great club and have a mom build.
Yeah. But how
So
about
I
whenever
mean,
you How about when you first got into it?
What, like when I first got into the game in general?
I don't know, like whenever you first got into the actual community. Do you remember how
Oh,
the community was at the time?
not really. I mean, even when I first started to get into the like actual community of it, uh, I was still just but a memer back then. I didn't take any of it too seriously. I mean, I still kind of don't, but so like I never really even looked at what builds were good and bad and what the good players were using. I was just kind of doing my own thing. Mostly still just going low poise and dual wielding, even though it's terrible.
Yeah.
Because that was fun for me. So like, yeah, my involvement in the like community, like as far as actual involvement goes, has all been somewhat recent, I would like to say. Like maybe within the past year or two. And it stayed pretty similar throughout that. Like the meta build has been either flip Chaos Blade or mid roll Murakumo, and that's what most people use. For a while, more recently, I think a lot of people have started to use builds that are both Ring of Favor and Protection and Havel's Ring with Chaos Blade instead of flipping to get some extra poison health out of it. I think that was Fisto that was mostly trying to push that.
Yeah.
And it is strong, but I don't know. I'm still not super into the actual good builds.
Was the meta always 125? Like even back whenever you first started. Well, I mean, I know it was 125 back then, but I don't remember what like if the meta was always 125 like as a community set standard. Like back in 2011, shit. Because
I think it was always either 125 or 135. It was always between the two. I think.
I don't think the PvP community really started to grow until like 2012 or 13 when it started to take off quite a bit. Because Dark Souls 1 like originally came out, I mean, it didn't have as big of a following because Dark Souls 1 I feel was kind of the well, I feel like it was kind of the publicity mascot for the series because you know, Demon Souls was kind of like a cult favorite for the time, but it was still a console exclusive, so it wasn't entirely known to everyone, even though it had I think it was I think it's called Greatest Hits is what it was. It became like the Greatest Hits game. I think it was also the game of the year in 2009, which I'd say would be a pretty deserving title. But um that's obviously subjective.
It's Demon Souls, you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But I feel that Dark Souls 1 kind of is what gave the whole series its publicity that it has today as being like the well, I don't know if you remember as basically what it hyped up as being at the time in like 2012 was when it became popular for being extremely hard, and that's what brought so many people in. But then people started realizing it was like all the other elements of the game, and so I think in 2012 is when it started actually like building up in terms of the trading community and the PvP community. But
Yeah.
but one thing that I've noticed is that it's kind of progressed. Well, I mean, as a lot of other things do in many other games, but the Demon Soul, fuck, what am I saying? The Dark Souls PvP community has kind of well, it's grown and it's evolved over time in accordance to surges in activity and shit and like different accordances that have gotten people back into the game and have subsequently brought more people to the community and so have caused it to gradually change and just make adjustments according to what people do over time. I think that one of these big milestones, or not milestones, but one of these big important points in time was when it shifted from Games for Windows Live to Steamworks, because I think that quite a bit of people who used to play the game who had like quit at the time found out that it was being ported over away from shitty Windows Live. So
yeah,
that
I would
probably
agree with
that probably brought quite a bit of new people into into the game, but also the old people. Some, I imagine, some of them also returned. But like let's see. But yeah, there have been these surges throughout the years, and like there's also the tournaments that happen and shit. Some small, like some personal, and some pretty majority community based. But I can't actually recall any major tournament events back in the day or even recently because I'm not exactly a part of the community and I haven't been, but the PvP
Yeah.
community that is.
There
On
was one tournament just recently, actually, that I played in it, even, but it was a little bit smaller scale. It wasn't a massive thing. I think it only turned into a 16-man.
but like on the subject of tournaments, do you remember or recall any like major tournaments that had taken place in the past, like around the time or after that you had actually gotten into the community? Like anything that is notable that stuck out in your mind?
Well, yes. There was the one time not too long ago that Barnese hosted a tournament. And there was a wonderful video made after the fact because the tournament actually never even ended. It got cut quite short.
It was kind of a non unsuccessful video. Tournament.
No, the video is fantastic.
I mean
The tournament, yeah, that tournament was, well, yeah.
Did you participate in that?
No, I actually wasn't even around to watch it. Unfortunately, I watched the beginning and then I had to go do other things. Unfortunately, but
Is
I'll
that?
send you the video. Maybe you'll
I think
have seen
that's
it before.
I think that's Astri in the chat that I told you about. Hey Astri. Believe it or not, your proposition kind of inspired me to start a podcast series, or well, it will hopefully be a series. This one started off pretty rocky because for the first 40 minutes of this podcast, my mic was muted, and I didn't fucking know. Well, it was muted in OBS, so that kind of fucked up. That's all right though. We're having a discussion about the PvP community in Dark Souls 1 specifically, and kind of how it's progressed in terms of how it's translated over to the other games over time, the surges it's had, the impact initially, and whatnot.
Oh, I can't post links in the chat. That's sad. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wait a second. Well, I've seen this before.
Yeah, that was the last.
Yes, it's Toast's video.
Yeah.
I actually think I could play this over stream. Yeah, it is pretty bad. We lost 40 minutes. It's quite a fucking bit. But really, it isn't that bad because technically I just kind of like for that 40 minutes we kind of just talked off and on about random smaller aspects, even though the majority of the stream when uploaded will be like mostly silent without with just Unda for a while, but we're actually just now getting into the actual note points about the community. So let me actually quickly see if I can I'm going to play this on stream actually.
That is the best video ever made in regards to Dark Souls. And I missed that tournament, unfortunately.
I actually did not set up for playing YouTube videos.
Yeah. When you asked about
the point down emote doesn't have as much impact in DS1. I disagree. I think that in DS1 it's the strongest because it's a multiple point down. Boom, boom, boom. You know, it's interesting. You said taunts. Now I'm thinking about it. Compared to the Dark Souls 3 tournaments that I hosted, literally every single
such a good video,
Dark Souls 3 tournament
everybody should
was
watch
littered with.
I think I have seen this.
Drama.
I think at this point most people have. I know.
Oh yeah. Wait, he wasn't using Watchdog?
A little bit of BM. This one has been free,
No.
dude.
I feel like that should be like a must-have.
That says something about the player base and
It's a
Bad
little
Man
bit
Chief
loud.
going with a pretty like knight like role play night style build.
Right, role-playing night style build.
What's for breakfast? Holy shit! What's for breakfast? What's for breakfast? Okay.
In a
what's for
medieval
breakfast?
fantasy
It's cool. At least
RPG.
he has the option
What's
to,
for
like,
breakfast?
If he loses, you can always say, "What's for breakfast?"
I actually didn't remember what was in this video until now.
Good video.
Oh, circles. Yeah, I saw that. Right? Circles around for the BS punish. Yeah. No dice though. No dice. No dice.
Why is he waving?
Great combust. No dice though. No dice. No dice. No dice.
That video is actually one of my favorite things to ever come out of this video game.
Pretty sure that's not.
I love it.
Banned.
And quite likely, from my notes here, is a huge fan of the NPC. Well, NPC. Yeah, I guess it's an NPC. Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the it's a Gwendolyn enthusiast.
Yes, that was
could lead him back to
definitely
winning this.
Meant to at least be a
Here we go,
major
the comeback.
event.
Wait, just
Gabe
has
been,
undead on.
I guess.
You just roll off.
A lot of his own viewers really weren't
All right,
that into it.
nice
because,
job,
of course,
Bri. Bri goes up 1 even.
This isn't the
Fantastic
first
work.
time he's done a tournament
like,
himself, has he? I mean,
yeah,
I
just,
remember
No,
one time.
he's done them
Whatsoever
before,
decided to roll
for
off.
sure.
So that's
Like, cause
important.
I actually remember I participated I participated in a tournament he did. It was in Demon Ruins, and by participate, of course, this was like 2015 Malcolm Reynolds wannabe WorldDstroyer. So by participate, I mean invade him with some shitty meme names and then fucking trash on him.
Of course.
In probably one of the most counterintuitive ways possible. But yeah, I actually forgot about that. Were there any others that you can remember?
No, I was never that big into tournaments, really. I didn't pay much attention to them in general. So, like, that was the first big one that I was really hyped up for, and then I ended up missing it anyway, so that was that.
Yes.
But the memes that came out of it, they were pretty worth it. That video is just fantastic.
It is. Okay. So, but on top of tournaments, I know there were like surges and stuff, where people were to come back and stuff, like what I talked about earlier with, an example would be where the shift from Games for Windows Live to Steamworks took place, which brought in a lot of people. But I'm pretty sure there have also been other examples of that in the past, where there have been surges in the community due to random events. And an off-topic thing that I would like to talk about is, with Bloodborne recently, how, Azuli, ID Damon, and Sir Sandbag were able to, well, not so much SandiskK, really, because he fucking leeched off of shit, but essentially, all of the findings of the cut content, the fact that it was actually public and nobody had to have any third-party tools in order to, like a developer kit for a PS4. Although you could save edit technically, you would have to have different methods of exporting the save, because I'm pretty sure all of From Software's save files have copy protection, so which would prevent it from a USB. So I'm sure they had to do something about that. But, like that, the whole finding of that and the fact that it was very available and that anybody could go and look at it, check it out for themselves, and I actually did when I found out about it, kind of brought a lot of people back to Bloodborne, if not for the right reasons, which would be for PvP, but I mean, I guess really there is no right reason. If a game has a resurgence of any kind, it's probably good, especially if it's dying, but...
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I know there have been examples of that, and like Dark Souls 1. Also, I just can't I can't exactly remember all of them, but one of, like, as I've said already, one of the major ones was the Steamworks change, Can you remember anything else like that, like in terms of the PvP community specifically, like in any
Well,
events like that?
there's one thing that I can remember that's happened a couple times now, and that is like, I think it's becoming a yearly thing now, the return to Lordran event,
Yeah.
which everybody knows about at this point, I think, but
Oh, so blood.
it's always fun. It always brings a lot of new blood in. A lot of them leave quickly, but still fun.
So according to Astri, Bloodborne doesn't have save or copy protection for the save files. That is contrary to Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls, by the way, because Demon Souls saves prevent or are copy protected in to where you can't copy it to a USB.
Really?
Yeah. Which is unfortunate because that means that you would need custom firmware in order to be able to do that, and that's fucking agitating. So, or you could just get a mule from someone else online. Thank you, Wolf. But yeah.
Mules are a great thing, at least for PC games, because I mean it's so easy to change the save files on PC that why wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure, especially for Souls games. But yeah, taking after Return to the Nexus, Return to Yharnam, and I think now is also Return to Drangleic, which are all Resurgence events. Actually, until you mentioned that, I completely forgot about that. I forgot that they were doing a Return to Lordran, because when I always think of a Resurgence for a game up until Demon Souls, I guess now, which is sad, but well, I don't know. Maybe they'll still do it for the for UV server, but I have no idea.
Hopefully, I think that'd be pretty cool. I mean, like I said, I can't really play that game, but I think it's still a neat game and that it deserves to have people playing it.
There is a train coming, but I think the problem with Demon Souls UV server will be that not many people, like a mass majority of people on a surface level who don't already know.
Damn, that's a loud train.
You could hear that well, huh?
Yeah.
I have a railroad right next to my house. But like the thing is, like, a lot of people on a surface level, like the mass majority of people who aren't like that closely connected to the inside Demon Souls community, like via the Discord server, would be unaware right now, and I think most are, that there is still ongoing activity. Well, I don't know actually, because quite a few I think I've seen a few news, like a few articles posted about Demon Souls living on through private networks, but that's kind of it's not exactly as technical as I would like.
I think part of the problem too is going to be that's even if it's a very small amount, it's going to require some work from people, and nobody wants to do any work for him. You know how often, like, you can go on the Dark Souls Steam forums, and there are so many people who, despite the threads being pinned on the Steam forums, they don't have PvP Watchdog. They don't have Dark Souls connectivity mod.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why, they just don't. And they're the easiest things to install and use, really. Especially connectivity mod, you don't have to actually install anything. You run a single executable file and you're done.
I think that's actually a pretty good point. Is that I think that another threat to the community of like Demon Souls is that people, like, information will be out there, but people won't put in the effort to find it, to find out, like, or factor in like the possibility of a Demon Souls running on a private network.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's also that, like, I guess it's also that, like, people aren't keeping. It would be in fault because people wouldn't care to find out what the Demon Souls community itself is going to do with itself afterwards. Otherwise, they would discover that it would be, it's still currently active. But, what was I saying? Yeah, I think it's a lack of ready information about the current standing of it and the current stability of the community. But I think that you can do to help, that I tried to do, or that I'm kind of trying to do, is to I mean, you can fix that by making the information putting the information out there. If you get more people to find out about it, then more people will start to play the server.
Yeah.
It'll start to be more active.
There will definitely be more people doing it, even if it's still not all the people that come across it.
Or another thing that you could do for Demon Souls specifically is that, like, if you they could just advertise Return to the Nexus as much as they normally would, but it just inform people at the same time that it will be over a private server. So everyone still gets the same amount of information.
Yeah, and just have that in the posts as well.
Mm-hmm.
As well as, of course, links to downloading and all that shit.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have to spoon feed people if you want them to use it.
Yeah. But, I think that'll be good.
Yeah.
But, I was saying something about Dark Souls 1. I don't remember what it was. Oh, Astri. I think that, Astri was saying in chat that, he's wondering why there isn't a Mega Mule for Bloodborne. I think that, well, here's what I think about Mega Mules in terms of, well, especially for a game like Bloodborne, because if you were to make a Mega Mule for Bloodborne, in the same one similar to the one made by Dom for Dark Souls 1, in like the same vein, is that with all this stuff, like all the available, like, well, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Scholar, and Dark Souls 3 are all very different in terms of how they level and shit with weapons. I'm sure you already know, Astri. In comparison to Bloodborne, because, well, if you really think about it, like, well, if someone was to make a Mecha Mule for Bloodborne, including every single gem type in the entire game, who's to say that you wouldn't just equip every single, like, the highest tier of every single gem, and then everyone would just be the exact same level of power? I feel like it would kind of break the fundamentals and the foundation of PvP as a whole, because then everyone would have ready access to everything, so, like, and also it would probably hurt the, like, the save editor community as a whole, like the cheating community of Bloodborne, because if everybody immediately has access to, like, unused armor shit, like, what's her name? Annalise's, like, her dress that normally can't be obtained without a save editor. If everybody has ready access to that, it's no longer a rare or exotic. It loses its value because it's in ready supply. It's supply and demand. And everything just, if something becomes surplus, it just is no longer useful. So I think it would. I think that might be. Those two might be the heavy reasons why something like that hasn't been done. But that's not to say someone might not come along and do that eventually. But I genuinely hope that doesn't happen, personally. But the thing that makes that different from Dark Souls 1, I'm pretty sure, is that Dark Souls 1 is pretty open-ended in terms of what you can do. Because Bloodborne is more damage efficient. Like, you can have like elemental statistics and whatnot, but if you just want to do a fuck ton of damage, of course you're just going to go for one single goal, which is the highest tier gem. But with Dark Souls 1, like the Mega Mule that was created, well, I'm sure Undo already knows, how everything is, well, it's very viable, like, everything is viable, pretty much. There's not really a better way of explaining it, is that everything is viable.
That's hard to agree or disagree with.
I mean,
you can certainly, like,
I mean, in terms of, like, weapon scaling only. Like, technically, well, okay, it's a lot more viable, how about that? Not everything is viable, but it's a lot more viable than Bloodborne, because Bloodborne's like a single goal type of achievement, where you just want to output as much damage as possible. With Dark Souls 1, if you're doing, like, PvP, I mean, you have to factor in, like, variety and shit also. Now, that, you also do that with Bloodborne, but, I mean, it's just not as prevalent, I don't think. Now, back on what I was saying beforehand, whatever the fuck that was, I think I went on a separate thing after I went off on a separate other thing. And now I am fucking lost. Okay, fuck it, moving on. Let's see here. So, I was talking about we were talking about the return to the Nexus shit, like whatever with like the servers.
Yeah. The events that get people to play again.
So okay, so something else I wanted to talk about was well, the mechanics that differ from Dark Souls 1 to the other games like Dark Souls 2, Demon Souls, etc. Not necessarily counting Bloodborne because I feel like it's so dramatic and we've already talked about that quite a bit, even if I was silent the whole fucking time. But well, personally, how do you feel about Dark Souls 1's PvP mechanics as a whole and like the things that make it different from the others and like the pace everything plays at? Like the instant backstabs and shit and the way things can be abused and the way things can be countered in terms of the activity and what you do. How do you feel about that?
I love all of it. All of it, honestly. Except for, like, well, a couple of things. But, like, I think the fact that the game is as broken as it is, which is obviously a lot less broken than Demon's Souls, but a lot of things that either are unbalanced or would be unbalanced end up actually balancing each other out just because there are... I don't want to call all of them glitches because honestly a lot of them are... There's a lot of either oversights or just unintended consequences of other systems in place that make you just able to use and do a lot more things than you normally would be able to. And I think a big one of those things is toggle escapes, which for whatever reason certain parts of the community actually hate about the game, despite the fact that Dark Souls 1 would have a lot of, like, several just off the top of my head, infinite stun locks.
Yeah.
And that's the Shodel R2, the Murakumo R1, the Zweihander R1. That's 3 right off the bat that are... If you get caught in them, you can't get out. If you have no poise.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of one of the controversial bits of that, is that it may be frowned upon in a lot of cases for its abusiveness, but it's kind of a core aspect because of like what you're saying with infinite stun locks, because without it, it kind of would just make some things broken, but even though it makes some things broken, it does benefit other aspects of it, so it's kind of middle of the road, I think.
It really, yeah, it pretty much is. Like, I think it really balances out a lot of bullshit. And honestly, even without them, the game would still be perfectly playable. Because if you have enough poise to tank one hit of something, then you have enough to not get infinitely stun locked. Yeah, but it really limits your build variety then. Of course, like in the case of the Zweihander R1, obviously all you can do is you can just not get hit and then you'll never get stun locked by it.
Yeah.
Which, in most cases, is actually pretty fucking easy to do because it's a massively slow weapon. But yeah, I don't really... That's one of the things that I don't understand why some people hate it so much.
Yeah. It's as Astrid saying, a lack of toggle escapes would make infinite stun locks king.
It would be a big thing, and that would be really annoying.
Because I feel like, well, I mean, without it, it would put a heavy emphasis on a broken aspect, but with it, it kind of causes more problems, but it also balances out others. I don't know.
I mean, when it comes to the problems it causes, I think that mostly is compounded by stuff like instant backstabs and the fact that it's a peer-to-peer game.
Yeah, like on
which to a lot of people isn't actually an issue. Not to everybody, obviously. A large part of the community doesn't. Well, depends on what you're saying by community, but a large amount of people who either do or would like to play Dark Souls 1 PvP, stuff like instant backstabs and the netcode of the game are an issue.
Yeah, those things play a factor. about like other aspects, like in terms of how the netcode plays into them um via mechanics. What do you think about how do you feel about backstabs and like the complaints that some people may have about them being instant?
I used to get the complaints, and to a certain extent, I guess I still do. But once I started to get more into the game and start to understand more about how everything worked, and I started to actually understand latency a little bit more, it really stopped bothering me, and now I quite like instant backstabs.
Like rather, I think what would be a better example of something being more abusive, I think, than beneficial, or like something that doesn't sustain another issue but is more well, I mean, I guess it's kind of controversial in terms of what it does, but things that can be abused, like chain backstabs and just other things like that. Like how do you feel?
Chain backstabs to me is a similar situation to toggle escapes, except not because it helps like toggle escapes do, but just because it's the reason it happens is the exact same reason for toggle escapes. And that is just the animation queuing system, and animations having different priorities. Like, that's all it is.
Mm.
But within the metagame of, just backstabbing each other, in that case, chain backstabs are actually a really good thing, because the chains themselves aren't so much, but the method you use to do them gives you a lot more variety and a lot safer ways to backstab each other.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to just run up and press R1. You can either parry and mash R1 during the parry, or you can kick them instead to override it. You can swap stances, like you can go from one hand to two hands and press R1 at the same time, and that'll stop you from attacking if you miss. There's so many different ways you can go about just backstabbing someone, and they all have their own use cases. And to me, that makes it a lot more interesting. And I really like that again. Because I am, of course, so deep-rooted in the PvP at this point, that any variety is good variety.
Asher brought up an interesting point. How do you feel about how, or the emphasis that each Souls game seems to play on? Oh, hold on one second.
Hurt my ears now, boy.
Right, my bad. But what I was saying is, how do you feel about the emphasis that the Souls game seems to play on critical hits with parries and ripostes, and backstabs especially?
Again, I still enjoy that quite a lot. I mean, I think it could be toned down quite a lot, actually. They do, frankly, too much damage, and it's a little annoying because of that. And that's actually, I'm not sure if you remember, I mentioned that I'm also helping work on the PvP overhaul. Yeah. Although, not so much anymore. I just haven't had the motivation as well as other things. But that's one of the things that we're focusing on fixing is, despite the fact that, mind you, the overhaul is almost entirely, not completely entirely, but like a very large portion of the people working on it are people who are into PvP in the game and are even into the metagame. And part of what we're fixing is making the backstab hitbox a little bit smaller, making them do quite a bit reduced damage, so they'll still be stronger than normal attacks by a decent bit, but not nearly as much as they are. And shit, what was the other thing that I was just about to say? I don't remember. We're gonna make the game less passive as well, though.
Do you think how do you think the people of the community will feel about that when you make all these drastic changes?
Well,
to some it may seem drastic, but to others it may be beneficial. But do you feel as though it will be like all these changes that you're making to like the core aspects such as gameplay that are heavily debated upon? Do you think it will be controversial or not?
I think no matter what we do, it's going to be controversial, honestly. I think we can make small changes and some people would just hate it.
Well, yeah, you get a point, because not everybody has the same mindset or ideal of what the perfect Souls game should be, so there will obviously be inconsistencies between different people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also a lot of misunderstandings about what we want to do, which we've tried to explain several times, actually, but I don't know, people read what they want to read. And, I mean, I think there's some things that some people might not like, especially in regards to nerfing backstabs as much as we are. But I think for the most part, it should be pretty well accepted, because we're not doing anything too out there.
Yeah.
It's all stuff that it's not like we're adding glitches to the game or removing glitches to the game. We're only rebalancing, and that's it.
I see.
Oh, and potentially adding some new items, equipment, and spells. Potentially. No confirmation on any of
that. Isn't there a ring in Dark Souls 2 that increases your riposte damage? I can't remember.
In 2?
Yeah, 2.
No, there's nothing that increases critical damage.
Are you sure? Because
there's some that reduce how much you take. Like, there's the one ring that puts a ghost on your back so you can't be backstabbed.
Yeah, it's Gower's ring.
Yeah. But no, there's nothing like Hornet Ring or anything like that in Dark Souls 2.
I couldn't remember. I thought that there might have been. But,
Nope. I mean, Dark Souls 2 added Flynn's Ring, but...
Isn't Flynn's Ring for... It's like lances only, isn't it?
The Flynn's Ring is increases damage based on your equipment, right? Whatever. And it also had the Ring of Blades, of course, which also just was a flat increase to your attack rating.
See.
But yeah, that's it. There was nothing that was critical damage specifically.
So, in terms of for the time that you've been a part of the PvP community, for Dark Souls 1 only I'm talking about, who are some of the people that you can remember interacting with in the past that have stood out to you, like throughout the time? It doesn't matter whether it was at the beginning or not.
Oh god, there's a lot of people that stand out to me. Well, there's, like I said, Pete the Pinecone, just because he was one of the first people I played with a lot. And he was a very friendly person. We got along great. There's... I'll never know how to pronounce his name. I know you guys don't get along, and 3310. Because he's another goddamn memer, and he has the best, stupidest builds on the fucking planet.
Yeah, I feel like he can act like a bit of a shithead, but I don't really care about him.
Yeah, I know you guys don't get along. Well, he's also autistic, so there's that.
Do you get along with Casual?
I think so. I don't know. He's a nice guy to me. Seems to have problems with a lot of other people. And yeah, I think I get along with him pretty well.
He acts like
we have our disagreements. Like, he is very fixated on, like, he thinks that playing at 60 FPS is actually a bad thing, and it makes, like, the game harder to play in PvP, which is kind of wrong. I won't get into that too much.
I noticed that he acts really pretentious to
I've heard that
to
from
people
a
that he
lot of
disagrees
people,
with.
but I mean, I don't know. I don't talk to him about that kind of stuff. Actually, I haven't talked to him in a while, even. But whenever we interact with each other, he's totally fine. He's a really cool guy, honestly.
I know he acted.
Go ahead.
No, you.
Okay. So yeah, the only thing is that, like, we disagree on 60 FPS. I don't really even talk to him about it, just because I don't want to have an argument with him if I don't have to.
I think 60 FPS is kind of a discussion in its own, isn't it?
It really is.
It's a pretty two-sided argument, because a lot of people like it for its performance benefits in terms of the way the game looks, but there's also another side that dislike the is that another train? Fuck. There's been 2 trains in like 10 minutes.
Have I ever showed you the clips of the game at 120 frames per second?
I don't think so.
Let me just DM you them. This is some guy, Charlie. I don't know who he is, but he was in one of the Discord servers, and he posted this one in particular, and
Charlie.
it's movement at 120 frames per second. And at normal walking speed, you sprint, basically. And when you sprint, you slow to a walk.
You can definitely tell the differences now. In case you didn't realize the differences between 60 and 30 when you were just looking at 60, now you fucking do.
No, yeah. At 120 frames per second, the difference becomes painfully obvious.
Well, I guess now you really, for those who really don't understand, I guess this is a good way of being able to tell exactly what it does to your gameplay.
It is a very noticeable change at that point. But I mean, at that point, you'd double the frame rate of 60 and quadruple the frame rate of 30, so it would be a really big difference if there is any effect, and there is.
No, but in terms of PvP, how do you feel like because I know that along with the discussion against 60 FPS and people who use 60 FPS, would you consider 60 FPS as a form of cheating technically? Because I mean, technically it is cheating because I mean it could be considered cheating because it has its own benefits that are different from 30 FPS, and I mean, I guess it's really not their fault for expecting everybody to play on 60 FPS, because I mean, who wouldn't over quality, or over who would? I think it'd be better to support quality over what is actually lying underneath from a base value without looking into it, because for somebody who doesn't realize the effect it has on the gameplay, you might
a lot of people don't realize.
You might veer more towards it.
If you don't realize, then I think that's totally fair. You shouldn't be expected to realize automatically. Like, but if somebody tells you about it and shows it to you, then I think it's at least worth thinking about going back to 30 frames per second. But that's how it happens to me, honestly. Now, I could never actually play at 60 frames per second because my hardware isn't good enough.
Oh.
But I used to play with my frame rate capped at 60. So I'd usually get like roughly 40 frames per second. But I had somebody explain to me how having not only a higher frame rate, but how having an inconsistent frame rate would negatively affect PvP. And once I experimented a little bit, I realized, there was definitely a difference. And that's when I locked it back to 30. Well, I don't lock the frame rate. You can actually feel free to unlock it. Just cap it to 30. Because having it locked at 30 all the time doesn't really help anything.
But I know that the idea that 60 FPS is cheating could be pretty debatable, because I know that like I was saying, some people may value quality over actual gameplay and not realize.
Yeah.
But I do know that there's quite a bit of people who Well, I guess there's not really much else to be said because it could be considered cheating because it does technically have an unfair advantage, but I feel like people who get mad at people who intentionally use 60 FPS because they think it looks better, and it does look better, but they don't realize from a gameplay performance. I don't
Yeah.
think that they should. I don't really think that there should be any reason to have a dislike for people. But I've never actually been able to notice. Can you tell if somebody has 60 FPS?
Usually, yeah.
Because I know that there are instances, but I don't think I've ever seen them.
I hate to bring him up again in regards to this. Like I said, I like the guy. We get along. But Casual actually put up a YouTube video, which wasn't the best way to go about it. But he played at 30 frames per second and he played at 60 frames per second. And he had someone else record for him, I think it was. And actually, I think they both recorded, and he put the footage of one of the other person in the description so you could watch it yourself, try to see. And he basically asked people to try and tell the difference between the footage. And there's a lot of reasons why that's not the best way to go about it. Because, well, for one, it's YouTube. And, it's YouTube. Compression is going to do its thing, and it's just going to... You don't really get the feel of it like you do when you're playing.
Yeah.
When you're watching it. But even then, and of course I'm an asshole, so I didn't really actually watch the entire video. But I watched the first 4 clips and I got all of them right as far as telling what the frame rate was. And I think that in itself is a pretty telling sign that there is a difference. Because I'm watching a YouTube video, and I'm not even honestly the best person to be trying to judge that, and I still got those ones right.
Yeah, I see.
If you can tell the frame rate just from watching a video of the other person, from the other person's side, trying to decide whether or not you're playing at 30 or 60, and you actually can, then there's obviously an effect on the online play.
Yeah. So, but with 60 FPS, isn't there, I know that one of the things it does is it affects backstabs in terms of,
Yeah, that's kind of
when
the
you
counter
circle.
argument that I see from a lot of people, Casual included. And that's the timings on parry and backstab and riposte frames are actually shortened a bit. And that's...
it doesn't make it, I guess that would make it an advantage.
So there are negatives
for the
to...
others.
Yeah, there are negatives to use 60 FPS. But you have to realize that you also have shorter recovery on just about every animation in the game. So that means, you're in the state for less time, even if for the other person, the frames to backstab or parry you are the same as they normally would be. You're also jittering around because you move twice the speed they do. Not actually twice the speed, but you know what I mean.
So it's pretty much an argument about which counter or which balances which out, if the pros outweigh the cons in terms of balance.
To me the thing is this. You get a negative on your own backstab and parry attempts. But okay. That's definitely a thing. That actually does happen. But you have shorter recovery on every animation. So you can get out of your normal attacks faster. You can get up from your backstabs even faster than normal. And this already... We call it tech, but it's just animation priority again. There's quick get up on backstab recoveries. When you get backstabbed, if you just walk towards the other person or jog towards them without pressing any other button, you'll actually get up faster than you would. normally after you get backstabbed. And that actually kind of screws up the other person because it changes the animation a little bit. Like, it cuts it off early. So you end up with that same effect on every backstab pretty much, and you can still quick get up.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pluses to being on 60 FPS, but it all makes the game look weird for the other person.
I can see how it would. What is your opinion on, well, so when Dark Souls 2 first came out, a lot of people were upset with how different, well, just the entire gameplay element was, and not so much the environment, but I mean, I guess the gameplay also weighed heavily into that. But how do you feel about the, or what are your opinions on the people who share harsh opinion towards Dark Souls 2's PvP and how drastically different it was from Dark Souls 1, and what do you know of happened as a result of that? Do you know if people actually went back to Dark Souls 1?
Yeah, a lot of people definitely went back to Dark Souls 1 after playing Dark Souls. And I mean, I wasn't there for the beginning of Dark Souls 2 either. I actually only played Scholar of the First Sin ever. But my own opinion of Dark Souls 2 is pretty similar to that of it just not being very good. But I actually had a lot of fun with the PvP when I did play it.
Mm.
And it's a lot different from the other two games, but I still think there's a lot of fun to be had sometimes.
I thought that the PvP in Dark Souls 2 and Scholar, well, I mean, they're both the same game, but I thought it was pretty satisfying personally. I thought it was it was a more versatile shift in my opinion from Dark Souls 1's very static, I guess you could call it, and straightforward PvP with its own balances and meta. But I feel like with Dark Souls 2 you could be a lot more open, but I think this is where people had their arguments against Dark Souls 2, where it was so dramatically different and it had all these different factors, and like the roll timing was strange and stuff. But do you feel like what is your opinion on Dark Souls 2's PvP? Do you feel that it was refreshing, or are you like do you fall on the side of the people who favor Dark Souls 1's over?
I mean, I definitely favor Dark Souls 1 more. But I mean, I didn't really think Dark Souls 2 was refreshing or anything either. But I did have fun with it all the same. And
So
I think for me that was enough.
I mean, you at least do you at least like it for what it is?
The PvP, sure. The game itself, not so much. I'm not a fan. Playing through it, playing through the game itself is a chore to me. I'm not a fan. The only things I do like is playing through it co-op was a bit of fun, especially the DLC bosses. Yeah. Like Sin, the dragon, and whichever DLC that was, the fucking toxic one.
Yeah, that was Sucking King.
Yes, thank you, Sucking King. That boss was, with a full group of people, it was kind of fantastic. It was not like playing a Souls game at all. It was more like playing an MMORPG and fighting a raid boss. But I had so much fun doing that. I really liked that boss with a big group of people.
I feel like I think that PvE in correlation with the new multiplayer aspects, like especially in Scholar with the more, I think it's like 4, you can have 4 phantoms at a time in Dark Souls.
Or not 3 Scholar. It's 3.
I don't know, whatever the case was. It was increased, but I feel that Scholar had quite a big emphasis, and Dark Souls 2 as a whole had a bigger emphasis more on the PvE, in terms of also, which supported the multiplayer aspects that had been added with the PvE alongside. But I feel that they also attempted to at least do something a little bit different with the PvP to make it more open and where you can do different things with it and be a little bit creative, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair to say. Um, I don't think the execution was very good, honestly. That's what it comes down to. I think they had a lot of good ideas and they just didn't do anything too great with them. Like, I liked power stancing. That was a really cool idea for a mechanic.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the end of the day, in most cases, there's not a huge reason to power stance, other than for the little bit of tech that is in the game. Like, you can actually instant backstab people in Dark Souls 2 if you're power stancing. You just, all you have to do is, I think it's you just toggle either out of power, you toggle out of power stance as you press R1 for the backstab, and you instantly backstab them instead of having to sit through the catch animation, if you will.
So I guess as a closing little discussion, because we're already at the 1 hour 41-minute mark, and which was most of the stream. Unfortunately was silent on my end. Which is pretty fucked up. So really, I guess we've only been up for like an hour of actual discussion, 40 minutes of just you talking to nobody. But
just silence and me talking. Yeah.
Yes. But what I wanted to touch on was shit, if I can remember what I was gonna say. Oh, well, because Dark Souls 1 Remastered is going to be coming out in May, coming pretty soon actually. So, well, it seems as if it's coming fast, but I don't know. We still have a few months away. But in terms of how the community is now, do you think that with Dark Souls 1 being remastered and all of the, well, after all these years, all of the meta standards that have been community set, like all the aspects and regulations that have been community set, like decided on by the population, the general consensus, do you think those will, do you think that a lot of those will carry over to the remaster, and how do you feel that they're going to evolve as time goes on with all the new changes? Like, I think, as they've stated and showed off, with the new multiplayer and whatnot.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, basically everything, honestly, is probably going to carry over. The only thing we don't know about is what glitches, air quotes, they're going to fix, if any, because we know Fextra gave them an entire list of bugs and glitches that they thought should be fixed, or at least should be like thought about fixed.
Wow, Fextra, thanks.
Yeah, Fextra fucking sucks. I'm sorry, I barely know the guy, but his opinion's terrible. But depending on how much of that gets fixed, if any, that'll determine how much carries over. As far as builds and stuff goes, the meta is going to stay the same. The meta level is going to stay the same. Because, I mean, it already stands that at the meta for, like, SL135, which is the tournament meta right now, that's 61 poise flip with a Chaos Blade. That's never going to change, because they're not doing any rebalancing or anything. It's the same game, but with a newer version of Havoc and upgraded multiplayer, upgraded lighting, higher res textures. That's pretty much it. Oh, and matchmaking server, of course. So the meta should really stay the same, no matter what the fuck they do to that game, because they're not going to change the game itself.
Well, I think that about wraps up this all of the points that I wanted to brush up on. We went off quite a bit. We gave a bit of a timeline that was all only heard by you, actually. So congratulations. Now you are the only person this entire stream that has listened to 40 minutes of audio.
Yeah.
That's good.
Amazing.
You now have unforeseen knowledge. But that's pretty much covers all that I wanted to talk about. So thank you, Unda, for being on this podcast and taking the time. So
Absolutely.
and thank you for anybody who I guess came in, said hi, whatever, listened. And that'll about do it. So yeah, that's the end of this.